Commander Elia Thorse stood at the observation window of Calaxis Research Station, staring at the blue-green moon below. Tethera Prime was beautiful from orbit. Its endless oceans reflected the light of the system's twin stars, creating patterns that seemed to dance across the surface. 3 billion people lived on floating cities down there. They had no idea what was coming. Behind her, the command center buzzed with quiet panic. Her team of scientists had never dealt with a military crisis before. Nobody in the Valorian collective had, not for almost 1,000 years. War was something their ancestors had left behind, a dark chapter in their history that they never wanted to repeat. "Commander, the scans are confirmed," said Menke, her chief researcher. His blue crystalline skin flickered with nervous energy, the way it always did when he was stressed. "It's the Kreshatar swarm, over 200 bioships. They'll reach us in 36 hours. Elia felt her heart sink. She had heard stories about the Kreshatar. Every civilized species had. They were a hive mind that consumed everything in their path. 3 star systems had already fallen to them. Billions dead, entire worlds stripped of all biological matter, left as empty rocks floating in space. "What about our defenses?" asked Dr. Sala, the station's medical officer. Menke made a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so bitter. "We have none. We're a research station. Our strongest weapon is a mining laser we use to cut ice samples." The other scientists looked at each other with growing fear. The Valorian collective was a peaceful alliance of 5 elder species. They had maintained peace through diplomacy, trade, and mutual cooperation for millennia. They built beautiful cities, created art, explored the mysteries of the universe, but they had no armies, no warships, no weapons of any real power. "We need to evacuate," said Elia. "Start the emergency protocols. Get everyone to the escape pods, Commander," Menke said quietly. "Even if we evacuate the station, what about Tethera Prime? 3 billion people. We have maybe 10,000 transport ships in the entire system. We can't save them all." The command center fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The math was simple and brutal. Most of those people would die. Elia turned back to the window. She had spent 5 years on this station, studying ancient artifacts left behind by civilizations that existed before the collective was even formed. She loved this work. She loved the peace and safety it represented. But now that peace was about to be shattered and she had no idea how to protect her people, "There has to be something," she whispered. "Some defense network, some old military protocol, anything." One of the junior researchers, a young Valorian named Kess, spoke up. "Commander, there are the forbidden archives, the ones we're not supposed to access without council approval." Elia looked at him. "What's in them?" "I don't know, but they're classified as emergency-only protocols. If this isn't an emergency, nothing is." Elia made her decision quickly. "Open them. Authorization code Thorse Alpha 7. If the council wants to punish me later, they can. At least we'll be alive to face punishment." Kess's fingers flew over his console. A moment later, files began appearing on the main screen. Most of them were boring administrative records, old treaties, forgotten agreements. But one file made Elia's breath catch. "The Deathworlder Accord," she read aloud. "Signed 800 years ago. What in the stars is a Deathworlder?" Menke was already pulling up the file. As he read, his skin began to pulse with a sickly yellow color. Fear. Pure fear. "Commander, you need to read this." Elia took the datapad from him and began to scroll through the document. With each paragraph, she felt her own fear growing. The file described a species called humans. They came from a planet called Earth, located in a distant part of the galaxy, but Earth wasn't like most inhabited worlds. The file classified it as a Class 12 death world, the highest possible rating. Elia had studied planetary classifications. Most civilized species came from Class 1 or Class 2 worlds, calm planets with stable climates, gentle weather, and few natural predators. A Class 12 meant something entirely different. Earth had extreme weather patterns, hurricanes that could destroy cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that could darken the sky for years. The temperature swung wildly between regions and seasons. The gravity was higher than most species could tolerate, and the life forms that evolved there were all competing in a brutal struggle for survival. Humans were persistence predators. They hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies could regulate temperature through sweating, allowing them to run for hours in heat that would kill most species. They could survive injuries that would be fatal to others. They could eat a wide variety of foods, even some that were poisonous to other species, and their history was filled with war. 800 years ago, the Valorian Collective had discovered humanity. First contact had gone well at first. Humans were curious, intelligent, and eager to join the galactic community. The Collective offered them membership with one condition. They would need to evolve beyond their violent nature. They would need to embrace peace as all civilized species had done. The humans had refused. They said their capacity for violence wasn't a flaw to be fixed. It was a survival trait that helped them survive on their brutal homeworld. They said they didn't want to forget how to fight, because fighting was sometimes necessary. The Collective had been horrified. They tried to convince the humans to change, but the humans wouldn't budge. Finally, an agreement was reached. Humans would take their ships and leave collective space. They would settle on the galactic fringe, in the wild territories beyond civilized borders. And in exchange, they signed the Deathworlder Accord. The accord was simple. If the Collective ever faced a threat they couldn't handle, they could send one emergency signal to human space. Just one, and the humans would come to help. 800 years had passed since then. In all that time, the signal had never been sent. The Collective had almost forgotten humans existed. They became stories, legends, cautionary tales told in academic circles. The violent species that chose warfare over enlightenment. "This can't be real," said Dr. Sala. "These creatures sound like monsters." "They sound like exactly what we need right now," Elia replied quietly. She looked at the activation codes for the emergency beacon. Her hands were shaking. Everything in her peaceful nature screamed against this choice. But what other option did they have? The Kreshtar would arrive in less than 2 days. They would consume everyone on Tethera Prime. Then they would move on to the next system, and the next until someone stopped them. "Commander, we don't know what humans have become in 800 years, Menke warned. "They could be worse than the Kreshtar. They could be monsters now." "Maybe," Ilya said. "But monsters might be exactly what we need to fight other monsters." She entered the activation codes. A light began blinking on her console. Deep in the station's communication array, an ancient beacon powered up. It had been sitting dormant for 8 centuries, waiting for this moment. The beacon sent its signal into the darkness, toward the distant territory where humans had built their civilization. The message was simple: emergency. Kreshtar swarm attacking Calaxis Station and Tethera Prime, requesting aid under the Deathworlder Accord. Please help. The signal traveled faster than light, jumping through quantum communication nodes, racing across the galaxy. Somewhere out in the unknown territories, it would reach human space, and then they would wait to see what answered. Elia looked at her team. They all looked terrified. She probably looked the same way. "We've sent the signal," she said. "Now we prepare for evacuation, and hope the humans remember their promise. Even if they do come, they'll need time to get here. We should assume we're on our own." But even as she said it, Elia couldn't help wondering what exactly had they just called. The file made humans sound incredibly dangerous. But that was 800 years ago. What had they become since then? Had they grown more peaceful, or had they become something even more terrifying? Outside the window, Tethera Prime continued its slow rotation, beautiful and unaware. The countdown had begun. In 36 hours, the Kreshtar would arrive. And somewhere in the darkness, maybe the Deathworlders were coming too. Elia just hoped she had made the right choice. She hoped the monsters she called would be better than the monsters that were coming to kill them all. Admiral Marcus Chen was reviewing supply reports when the alarm began screaming through Terra Nova Station. The sound cut through the quiet hum of the command center like a knife. Every officer on the bridge froze for a split second before jumping into action. "Sir, we have an emergency beacon activation," Lieutenant Park called out from communications. Her voice was steady, but Chen could hear the tension underneath. "Source code is ancient. Admiral, it's the Valorian Accord beacon." Chen felt something cold settle in his chest. He stood up from his command chair and walked to Park's station. On her screen was a signal pattern he had only seen in historical archives. "You're telling me the Valorians are calling us for help?" "Yes, sir. The signal is authentic. It's using encryption codes from 800 years ago. Someone activated the Deathworlder Accord." The bridge went silent. Every human present knew what that meant. 8 centuries ago, humanity had been offered a place in the Valorian Collective. All they had to do was give up their weapons, embraced total pacifism and promised to never make war again. Humanity had said no. Chen remembered learning about it in school. The history lessons had been clear. The elder species of the collective were terrified of humans. They looked at Earth and saw a nightmare planet. They looked at human history and saw nothing but war, violence, and struggle. They wanted humanity to change, to become peaceful like them. But humanity had refused to change. Not because they loved war, but because they understood something the peaceful species didn't. The universe was dangerous. Peace was only possible when someone was strong enough to defend it, so humanity left. They took their ships, their weapons, and their warriors, and they settled in the frontier territories. The places no one else wanted, the dangerous edges of known space where civilized species didn't go. And in those 800 years, humanity had built an empire. Not an empire of conquest, but an empire of survival. They had fought pirates, alien predators, rogue AI, and worse. They had learned to thrive in the harshest environments. They had become exactly what the collective feared, a military power. "What's the threat?" Chen asked. Park pulled up the message details. Kreshatar swarm, 200-plus bioships. Target is Galaxis Research Station and Tethera Prime. Estimated time to contact when the message was sent, 36 hours. How long ago was it sent? 2 hours ago, sir. Chen did the math quickly. Pull up fleet positions. I want every available ship. His tactical officer, Commander Williams, was already working on it. Sir, the 7th Fleet is currently in the sector. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, 200 support craft. We can be there in 34 hours if we push the engines hard. That gives us 2 hours before the Kreshtar arrive, Chen said quietly. He looked around at his officers. The collective abandoned us 8 centuries ago. They called us monsters. They said we were too violent, too dangerous to be part of their peaceful society. Now they want our help. He saw the anger on some faces, the bitterness. Humanity hadn't forgotten how they were treated. The collective had made humans feel like they were something wrong, something broken that needed to be fixed. But Chen also saw something else. Determination. Because humanity had signed the accord. They had given their word, and humans kept their promises. Sir, Williams said carefully, we've been fighting the Kreshtar for 60 years. We know how dangerous they are. If they hit Tethera Prime, billions will die. Chen nodded slowly. I know, and you know what else? The collective has no idea we've been fighting the Kreshtar all this time. They've been safe and peaceful in their core territories, making art and studying ancient ruins. Meanwhile, we've been out here holding the line. He walked back to his command chair and sat down. The decision was already made. It had been made 800 years ago when the accord was signed. Humanity had promised to come if called. And despite everything, despite being rejected and feared, humans honored their word. Activate the 7th Fleet. All ships are to prepare for immediate deployment. Transit time 34 hours. We're going to war. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers began issuing orders. Chen opened a communication channel to the rest of the fleet. Within minutes, thousands of personnel were moving to battle stations. The human fleet was nothing like what the Valorians remembered. 800 years of frontier warfare had taught humanity hard lessons. Their ships were bigger now, heavier, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. They were built for one purpose, to survive fights with things that wanted to kill them. The dreadnoughts were massive, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. The cruisers were fast and deadly, designed to hunt down and destroy smaller threats. And the support craft included everything from medical ships to ammunition carriers to specialized boarding vessels. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the fleet assembling. The Valorians had called them monsters. Maybe they were right. Humanity had spent 8 centuries becoming very, very good at war, because out on the frontier, if you weren't good at war, you died. Sir, we're ready to jump, Williams reported. Before we go, Chen said, I want to send a message to Galaxis Station. Let them know we're coming. Yes, sir. What should it say? Chen thought about it. 800 years of silence. 800 years of being forgotten, of being treated like something shameful. And now, in their moment of desperation, the collective remembered humanity existed. Tell them this. Galaxis Station. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran 7th Fleet. We have received your distress signal. We are en route to your position. Estimated arrival, 34 hours. The Kreshtar swarm is now our problem. Keep your people away from the combat zone. We'll handle this. Park sent the message. Then she looked at Chen. Sir, should we say anything else? They might want to talk, to coordinate, to... No, Chen cut her off. We're not here to make friends. We're here because we signed a treaty. When this is over, then we can talk about what comes next. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. The ships disappeared from Terra Nova Station and began racing across the galaxy toward the Galaxis system. Inside the flagship Indomitable, Chen sat in his ready room and pulled up files on the Crescitar. Humanity knew them well, too well. The swarm had tried to attack human colonies 7 times in the past 60 years. Each time, human forces had driven them back. But it had cost lives. Thousands of brave men and women had died keeping the Crescitar contained. And all that time, the collective had no idea. They were safe behind human lines, protected by the very warriors they had rejected. Chen felt old anger stirring, but he pushed it down. Personal feelings didn't matter right now. What mattered was that innocent people were about to die if the 7th Fleet didn't arrive in time. A message came through from Captain Rodriguez of the dreadnought Thermopylae. Admiral, the crew wants to know if this is real. Are we really saving the collective? Chen smiled slightly. Tell them yes. We're doing what we always do. We're protecting people who can't protect themselves. It doesn't matter if those people like us or not. They're going to get a shock when they see what we've become, Rodriguez said. Let them be shocked, Chen replied. Maybe it's time they learned that warriors aren't monsters. We're the reason they got to stay peaceful for 800 years. They just didn't know it. The fleet continued its journey through the black of space. Inside each ship, thousands of personnel prepared for battle. They checked weapons, ran combat drills, said prayers or made jokes or sat in quiet meditation. Everyone dealt with pre-battle nerves in their own way, but they all knew what they were fighting for. Not for glory, not for revenge, but because when someone sent out a distress call, you answered. Even if that someone had called you a monster, even if they had pushed you away and tried to make you ashamed of who you were. Humanity had learned long ago that being strong didn't make you evil. Being capable of violence didn't make you a monster. What mattered was how you used that strength. And right now humanity was going to use their strength to save billions of lives. Chen looked at the countdown timer. 32 hours until they reached Galaxis. 34 hours until the Crescitar arrived. They were going to make it. Barely. And then the collective was going to see what Deathworlders could do when they went to war. For 800 years they had wondered and worried about what humanity had become in exile. Soon they would find out. The wolves were coming, and this time they were the good guys. Commander Elia Thors hadn't slept in 30 hours. She stood at her station, watching the long-range scanners with burning eyes. The human fleet was close now. So was the Crescitar swarm. Commander, the human ships are dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Menke announced. They're here. Elia felt her hearts racing. On the main screen, ship signatures began appearing. One by one, human vessels emerged from quantum space into normal reality. And with each new ship, Elia felt a growing sense of dread. These were not the ships from the historical records. 800 years ago, human vessels had been small, primitive things. Powerful for their time, but nothing compared to modern collective technology. That was not what Elia was seeing now. The human dreadnoughts were enormous. Each one was over 3 kilometers long, covered in heavy armor plating that seemed to absorb sensor scans. Weapons bristled from every surface. Point defense turrets, missile batteries, massive main guns that looked capable of cracking a planet's crust. These were not exploration ships. These were pure warships designed for one single purpose: destruction. By the ancestors, Dr. Sala whispered. What have they become? The cruisers were equally intimidating. Sleeker than the dreadnoughts, but still deadly looking. They moved with purpose, taking up defensive positions around the station with military precision. The smaller support craft spread out in a protective screen, their sensors sweeping space for threats. Commander, we're receiving a communication request from the flagship, Kess reported. Elia straightened her uniform and nodded. Put it through. The screen changed to show the bridge of a human warship, and standing at its center was Admiral Marcus Chen. Elia had seen pictures of humans in the historical archives, but seeing one in person was different. Chen was tall for his species, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His uniform was simple but functional, dark blue with rank insignia on the collar. Behind him, the bridge was all business. No decorations, no art, just screens, stations, and personnel working with calm efficiency. But what surprised Elia most was the diversity. The human crew came in different colors, different sizes. Some had visible cybernetic enhancements. Others seemed completely organic. But they all moved with the same confident purpose. "Calaxis Station," Chen said. His voice was firm, controlled. "I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. The Kreshtar swarm will arrive in approximately 90 minutes. My fleet will engage them before they reach this station or Tethera Prime." "Admiral Chen," Ilya began, trying to find the right words. "We are grateful that you came. We know that relations between our peoples have been difficult. After 800 years of silence, we had no right to expect Commander," Chen interrupted, and his tone was not unkind but very firm. "We don't have time for apologies or explanations. We came because we signed a treaty 800 years ago. Humanity honors its commitments. When this battle is over, we'll discuss what comes next. Right now, I need you to evacuate all non-essential personnel from the outer sections of this station. Get everyone into the core shelters. Keep your shields up and your communication channels open. Do not, under any circumstances, leave the station or send out any ships. Is that clear?" Ilya nodded quickly. "Perfectly clear, Admiral." "Good. Stay safe, Commander. Chen out." The screen went dark. Ilya stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Chen had been professional, but there had been something cold in his manner. Not hostile exactly, but distant, like he was doing a job that needed doing, nothing more. "He didn't seem very happy to see us," Menke observed quietly. "Would you be?" Ilya replied. "We called them monsters 800 years ago. We told them they weren't good enough to join our society. And now the first time we contact them in 8 centuries, it's to beg for help." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring. The Kreshtar had arrived. The bioships appeared in multiple locations, dropping out of their organic faster-than-light travel in a coordinated pattern. They were hideous things, grown rather than built. Each one looked like a cross between a starfish and a tick, with pulsing organic skin and weapons that were more like organs than guns. There were over 200 of them. They immediately began moving toward Tethera Prime, completely ignoring the space station. The Kreshtar didn't care about research facilities. They wanted biomass. They wanted the 3 billion living beings on the moon below. Ilya watched the human fleet's response with growing amazement. The humans didn't wait. They didn't try to negotiate or warn the Kreshtar away. They just attacked. The dreadnoughts opened fire first. Their main guns lit up space with beams of concentrated energy. The kinetic weapons followed, launching projectiles that crossed the distance in seconds. The missiles came last, hundreds of them, each one tracking a target with ruthless precision. The Kreshtar bioships began dying. The ones hit by the main guns simply exploded, their organic hulls unable to withstand the sheer power. The kinetic rounds punched through them like bullets through wet paper, and the missiles found weak points with terrifying accuracy, detonating inside the bioships and tearing them apart from within. But the swarm was huge. For every bioship destroyed, there were 10 more pushing forward. They returned fire with bioplasma weapons, streams of organic acid that could eat through most known materials. "The human shields are taking hits," Menke reported, his voice filled with worry. "Those plasma weapons are incredibly corrosive, but the human shields held. And the human ships kept advancing." This was what shocked Ilya most. The human fleet wasn't staying back, wasn't fighting defensively. They were pushing forward, driving into the swarm like a blade. The dreadnoughts moved in a wedge formation, their overlapping shields protecting each other. The cruisers darted around the flanks, hitting targets of opportunity and preventing the Kreshtar from surrounding the larger ships. "They're hunting," Dr. Sala said with something like awe in her voice. "Look at how they move. They're pack hunters." She was right. The human ships coordinated their attacks with perfect timing. One cruiser would draw fire while another struck from a different angle. The dreadnoughts would focus their weapons on the largest bioships while the smaller craft took out the medium-sized threats. It was like watching predators take down prey, and it was working. The Kreshtar were losing. The swarm that had destroyed 3 star systems, the nightmare that had haunted collective space for years, was being systematically torn apart by the human fleet. A group of bioships tried to break away from the main battle, and make a run for Tethera Prime. Immediately, 3 human cruisers broke formation and intercepted them. The battle was brief and brutal. The cruisers used their speed to avoid the plasma weapons while hammering the bioships with missiles and energy weapons. Within minutes, all the Kreshtar ships in that group were destroyed. "Commander," Kess said quietly, "I'm analyzing their combat patterns. This level of coordination, this efficiency, they've done this before, many times." Alia pulled up the tactical analysis. Kess was right. The human ships moved with the confidence of experience. They knew exactly how to fight the Kreshtar. They knew the weak points of the bioships. They knew how to avoid the plasma weapons and where to strike for maximum damage. "How long have they been fighting the Kreshtar?" Alia wondered aloud. "Unknown, Commander. But based on this level of tactical knowledge, I would estimate decades at minimum." The implication hit Alia like a physical blow. While the collective had been safe in their core territories, building museums and studying ancient civilizations, the humans had been out here fighting. They had been protecting the frontier, keeping threats like the Kreshtar from reaching collective space. And the collective had never even known about it. On screen, the battle continued. The human fleet had divided the swarm into smaller groups and was destroying them methodically. The Kreshtar tried different tactics, tried to adapt, but the humans countered every move. It was like watching a master chess player dismantling an amateur. Then something unexpected happened. A massive bioship appeared, much larger than the others. It was at least 5 kilometers across, pulsing with sickly green light. Sensors showed it was generating enormous amounts of energy. "That's a planet killer," Menke said with horror. "It's going to bombard Tethera Prime with biospores. The entire moon will be infected within days." The planet killer began moving toward Tethera Prime, protected by dozens of smaller bioships. It was ignoring the human fleet, focusing only on its target. Alia watched in despair. The human ships were too far away. They would never intercept in time. 3 billion people were about to die. Then one of the human dreadnoughts did something that Alia would never forget. The ship called Thermopylae broke formation and accelerated directly toward the planet killer. It wasn't trying to shoot the massive bioship. It was ramming it. "What are they doing?" Dr. Sala screamed. "That's insane." The Thermopylae's engines burned at maximum power. The other human ships tried to provide cover fire, destroying the smaller bioships in its path. But everyone on Calaxis Station could see what was about to happen. The Thermopylae collided with the planet killer at full speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought's reactor core detonated. The explosion was visible across 3 star systems. A miniature sun bloomed. The sacrifice of the Thermopylae broke the Kreshtar swarm's momentum. The bioships began to fall back, trying to regroup. But the human fleet gave them no chance to recover. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as his ships pressed the attack. He felt the loss of the Thermopylae like a knife in his chest. Captain Rodriguez had been a friend for 20 years. 1,200 good people were gone, but their sacrifice had saved 3 billion lives on Tethera Prime. "All ships maintain pursuit," Chen ordered. His voice was calm, but everyone on the bridge could see the grief in his eyes. "Don't let them escape. I want every Kreshtar ship in this system destroyed." The fleet moved forward like an unstoppable wave. The cruisers hunted down the smaller bioships while the remaining dreadnoughts focused on the larger threats. The Kreshtar were trying to flee now, but it was too late. They had come to this system expecting easy prey. Instead, they found predators. On Calaxis Station, Commander Elia Thors watched the battle unfold with a mixture of awe and shame. The human ships fought with a brutality that was shocking to her peaceful sensibilities. But she was beginning to understand something important. This brutality had a purpose. Every shot was calculated. Every tactic was designed to end the threat as quickly and efficiently as possible. The humans weren't fighting because they enjoyed violence. They were fighting because it was necessary, and they were very, very good at it. "Commander, we're detecting human boarding craft approaching several damaged bioships," Menke reported. "They're sending troops inside." Alia pulled up the sensor data. Small assault shuttles were latching onto bioships that were damaged but not destroyed. She watched as armored human soldiers breached the organic hulls and disappeared inside. "Why would they board the enemy ships?" Dr. Sala asked. "Why not just destroy them?" "They're making sure nothing survives," Alia said quietly. "The Kreshtar are a hive mind. If even a small piece escapes, it can regenerate and spread again. The humans are being thorough. What happened inside those bioships was not visible to the station's sensors, but Alia could imagine it. Human soldiers fighting through dark organic corridors, hunting down every piece of Kreshtar biology. It was brutal work, necessary work, the kind of work that peaceful species like the Valorians couldn't bring themselves to do. Hours passed. The battle continued. Slowly, methodically, the human fleet dismantled the swarm. Bioships exploded or were boarded and purged. The Kreshtar tried different tactics, tried to find a weakness in the human formations, but nothing worked. The humans had fought this enemy before. They knew every trick, every strategy. Finally, after 6 hours of continuous combat, the last bioship was destroyed. The Kreshtar swarm that had threatened to consume an entire system was gone. A few ships tried to flee into deep space, but human hunter-killer groups pursued them. None would escape to threaten another world. Chen stood on his bridge looking at the tactical display. The green markers representing human ships were scattered across the system. Many were damaged. Several had taken critical hits and would need extensive repairs. And one, the Thermopylae, was just a spreading cloud of debris. The final casualty report appeared on his screen. 4,200 dead, 8,000 wounded, 3 destroyers lost in addition to the Thermopylae, 2 cruisers severely damaged. It was a high price. But they had won. Tethara Prime was safe. Calaxis Station was intact. Billions of lives saved. Sir, we're receiving a communication request from Calaxis Station, Lieutenant Park reported. Commander Thorse wants to speak with you. Chen nodded. Put her through. The screen showed the Valorian command center. Alia Thorse stood there and Chen could see she had been crying. Valorians cried differently than humans, their tears glowing slightly with bioluminescence, but the emotion was unmistakable. Admiral Chen, she began, her voice shaking. What you did, what your people sacrificed, we have no words. The Thermopylae saved 3 billion lives. We are forever in your debt. Chen looked at her for a long moment. Part of him wanted to be cold, to remind her that humanity had been doing this for centuries while the collective ignored them. But he saw genuine grief and gratitude in her face. And he remembered that soldiers don't fight for politics. They fight to protect the innocent. Commander Thorse, he said quietly. Captain Rodriguez and her crew did what any soldier would do. They saw people in danger and they acted. That's what warriors are supposed to do. That's what we've always done, even when the galaxy forgot we existed. Ilia flinched at his words. The implications were clear. The collective had abandoned humanity, but humanity had never stopped protecting others. Admiral, please allow us to help with your wounded, Ilia said. Our medical facilities are advanced. We can treat your injured personnel. Thank you, Commander. We'll take you up on that offer. We're also going to need to do repairs. Some of our ships are barely holding together. Of course, anything you need. And Admiral, the Collective Council wants to speak with you. They're requesting a formal meeting. Chen's expression hardened slightly. I'm sure they do. Tell them I'll meet with them after we've recovered our dead and taken care of our wounded. My people come first. Politics can wait. Over the next 3 days, the human fleet limped into defensive positions around Calaxis Station. Medical shuttles ferried wounded soldiers to the station's hospitals. Ilia personally ensured that the human wounded received the best care possible. Valorian doctors, who had never treated combat injuries before, worked alongside human medics to save lives. Dr. Sala found herself working on a young human Marine who had been injured during a boarding action. His name was Private First Class James Cooper, and he had taken a bioacid spray to the chest protecting his squad. You're very brave, Sala told him, as she worked to heal the chemical burns. Cooper smiled weakly. Just doing my job, Doc. We all signed up knowing what we were getting into. But why? Sala asked. Why would anyone choose to fight like this? To risk so much? Cooper thought about it for a moment. Because someone has to. If we don't stand between the monsters and the innocent people, who will? That's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves, even if they don't like us much. Sala felt something shift in her understanding. She had spent her entire life believing that violence was always wrong, that peaceful beings were superior to warriors. But looking at this young human who had nearly died saving strangers, she realized how wrong she had been. Warriors weren't monsters. Warriors were the people who stood in the dark places so others could live in the light. On the 3rd day, Admiral Chen finally agreed to meet with the Collective Council. The meeting took place on Calaxis Station in a conference room that had been hastily prepared. The council members appeared via hologram, 7 elder beings representing the 5 species of the collective. Chen entered wearing his dress uniform. Behind him walked 3 of his senior officers. They looked tired. They looked like people who had just fought a war. But they also looked unbreakable. The council leader, an ancient being named Eldest Vorn, spoke first. His holographic form wavered slightly with emotion. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Valorian Collective, we offer our deepest gratitude for your intervention. You saved billions of lives. You honored the Deathworlder Accord when we had no right to expect you would. We are humbled by your sacrifice and your courage. Chen stood at attention. Eldest Vorn, humanity made a promise 800 years ago. We keep our promises. Yes, Vorn said slowly. You do, and that shames us, Admiral. Because we broke our promises to you. 800 years ago, we asked you to change who you were. We treated your strength as a flaw. We made you feel like monsters for being able to defend yourselves. We were wrong. The other council members nodded in agreement. One of them, a being named Counselor Mesh, spoke up. We have been reviewing records from your fleet's communications during the battle. We discovered something shocking. You've been fighting the Kreshtar for decades. Is this true? 63 years, Chen confirmed. They've tried to attack human colonies 7 times. We drove them back every time. We've also fought the Vex Concordat, the Silicate Hives, the Breach Dwellers, and a dozen other threats. Most species in the collective have never even heard of these dangers because we stopped them before they reached civilized space. Silence filled the room. The council members looked at each other with growing horror. They had been safe and peaceful all this time because humanity had been fighting battles they never knew about. Why didn't you tell us? Born asked. Why didn't you ask for help? Chen's expression was hard. Would you have helped? 800 years ago, you made it clear that you wanted nothing to do with our violent ways. We took the hint. We protected ourselves, and as it turns out, we protected you too. Not because we wanted your thanks, but because it was the right thing to do. Counselor Mesh spoke again, her voice filled with emotion. We called you monsters. Yes, Chen said simply. You did, but you saved us anyway. Yes, because that's what warriors do. We protect people, even people who hate us for what we are. Vorn straightened in his holographic form. Then let us make things right. Admiral Chen, humanity has proven its value beyond any doubt. We wish to off. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Calaxis Station. Commander Elia Thors stood in the newly constructed joint defense outpost on the border between collective and human space. Through the observation window, she could see both Valorian and human ships patrolling together. It was a sight she never thought she would witness. The past half-year had changed everything. The Unified Defense Pact was more than just words on a treaty. It was real cooperation between peoples who had been separated for 8 centuries, and it was working. Human military advisors now trained collective defense forces, not to turn them into warriors like humans, but to teach them how to protect themselves. Elia had watched Valorian recruits learn basic combat tactics, weapons handling, and strategic thinking. It was uncomfortable for her people at first. Violence went against everything the collective had believed for millennia, but the Kreshtar attack had taught them a hard lesson. Peace only lasted when someone could defend it. Commander Thors, we have an incoming shuttle, her assistant Kess announced. Admiral Chen is arriving for the dedication ceremony. Elia felt nervous. She had spoken with Chen several times over the past months, always formally, always about official business. But today was different. Today they were dedicating a memorial, and she needed to say things that had been weighing on her heart. The shuttle docked and Chen emerged, accompanied by 2 officers. He looked less tired than he had 6 months ago, but Elia could see the weight he carried, the weight all soldiers carried when they remembered the ones they had lost. Admiral Chen, welcome, Elia said, greeting him with the traditional Valorian gesture of respect. Commander Thors, Chen replied with a slight bow. Thank you for organizing this. They walked together through the station's corridors. Other personnel, both human and Valorian, nodded respectfully as they passed. The awkwardness between species was fading. Slowly, but it was happening. They reached the memorial hall, a large circular room with a transparent dome showing the stars above. In the center was a monument made of both Valorian crystal and human steel. merged together to create something beautiful and strong. On one wall were inscribed the names of every human who died at Calaxis. 4,200 names. On the opposite wall were the names of the Valorians who had been working on the outer sections of the station when the battle began and didn't make it to safety in time. 147 names. They're together here, Elia said softly. Human and Valorian. All people who died protecting this station and the world below. That's how it should be. Chen walked to the memorial and placed his hand on the section bearing the name of Captain Rodriguez and the crew of the Thermopylae. He stood there silently for a long moment. Other people began arriving for the ceremony. Human crew members, Valorian civilians from Tethera Prime, council members via hologram. They filled the hall quietly, respectfully. When everyone was assembled, Eldest Vorn appeared on the holographic projector. His ancient face looked serious and sad. We gather today to remember those who fell defending Calaxis Station and Tethera Prime, Vorn began. For too long, the Valorian collective believed that peace came from avoiding conflict, from turning away from violence, from rejecting those who understood war. We were wrong. Peace comes from brave people choosing to stand between danger and the innocent. Peace is bought with sacrifice, maintained with vigilance, and protected by warriors willing to give everything. Vorn paused, letting his words sink in. Elia saw many Valorians in the crowd with glowing tears on their faces. The humans who died here were strangers to us. We had rejected their people centuries ago. We had called them monsters. Yet when we called for help, they came, and they gave their lives to save ours. This is not the action of monsters. This is the action of heroes. Admiral Chen was asked to speak next. He walked to the center of the room, looking at all the faces gathered there. 800 years ago, humanity was offered a choice, Chen said. Join the collective and change who we were, or walk away and remain warriors. We chose to remain who we were, not because we loved war, but because we understood that the universe is dangerous. Someone has to stand watch in the dark places. Someone has to be ready when the monsters come. He turned to look at the memorial. The people whose names are on this wall understood that. They didn't die because they were violent or because they wanted to fight. They died because they saw innocent people in danger and they couldn't walk away. That's what warriors do. That's what humans do. Chen looked directly at the Valorian civilians in the crowd. I know many of you still struggle with what you saw during that battle. The violence, the destruction, the brutal efficiency of warfare. It's hard to watch, especially for peaceful people. But I want you to understand something. Every shot fired, every ship destroyed, every aggressive tactic we used was calculated to save lives. We didn't fight the way we did because we're cruel. We fought that way because it was the fastest way to eliminate the threat and protect you. An elderly Valorian stood up from the crowd. Elia recognized her as Mena Solis, a grandmother who lived on Tethera Prime with her family. Admiral, Mena said, her voice shaking with emotion. I have 43 descendants living on the moon below. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They're all alive because your people came when we called. Because the Thermopylae sacrificed itself. Because 4,000 humans died for strangers. How do we repay that debt? Chen smiled sadly. You don't, ma'am. That's not how it works. The people on that wall didn't die expecting payment. They died doing what they thought was right. The only thing I ask is that you remember them. Remember that warriors aren't monsters. And maybe, when the next threat comes, you'll stand with us instead of calling us only when you're desperate. We will, Mena said firmly. Several other Valorians nodded in agreement. After the ceremony ended, people mingled, sharing stories and memories. Elia found Chen standing alone near the memorial, looking up at the stars through the dome. Admiral, may I speak with you? She asked. Of course, Commander. Elia took a breath. I owe you an apology. A personal one, not just an official one. When I activated that beacon, I was terrified, not just of the Kreshtar, but of what might answer. I had read the old files about humans, the classifications, the warnings, the descriptions of your world and your history, and I was afraid that the monsters we called would be worse than the monsters we were facing. Chen didn't interrupt. He just listened. But you weren't monsters, Ilya continued. You were heroes. You came when we needed you, even though we didn't deserve it. And you showed us that we were wrong about everything. Strength isn't evil. Warriors aren't monsters. Sometimes the scariest-looking people are actually the bravest and most noble. We're not heroes, Commander, Chen said quietly. We're just people who learned hard lessons in a dangerous galaxy. Earth made us tough. History made us careful. And 800 years in the frontier made us skilled, but underneath it all, we're just humans trying to survive and protect the people we care about. That's what makes you heroes, Ilya insisted. You protect people you don't even know. People who treated you badly. You do it anyway because it's right. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Can I tell you something, Commander? Something I haven't told many people? Please." When we received your distress call, my first instinct was to ignore it. After 800 years of silence, after being called monsters and rejected, part of me wanted to let the collective face the Kreshtar alone. To let you see what it was like out here in the dark. Ilya felt her heart sink. But then I remembered something my grandmother told me, Chen continued. She said that the true test of character isn't how you treat people who respect you. It's how you treat people who don't. The collective didn't respect us, didn't understand us, didn't want us. But that didn't mean you deserved to die, so we came. Not because we're heroes, but because we're human. And humans help people who need help, even when it's not convenient or appreciated. Ilya had tears glowing on her cheeks now. We were so wrong about you. Maybe, Chen said. But you're learning. That's more than I expected. For 800 years, the collective maintained its peaceful society by pretending the dangerous parts of the universe didn't exist. Now you're facing reality. It's hard, but necessary. The joint defense stations are already making a difference, Ilya said, changing to a more hopeful topic. We've detected 3 potential threats in the past 6 months. Human forces responded to 2 of them. And on the 3rd one, our newly trained collective defense force handled it themselves with human advisors. I heard about that, Chen said with approval. Your people are learning fast. You'll never fight like humans do, and you shouldn't try. But you're learning how to protect yourselves. That's good. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ships patrol outside. Admiral, can I ask you something? Ilya said. What happens now? The Unified Defense Pact is working, but what about the future? Will humans and Valorians ever truly be friends? Or will we always just be allies of convenience?